our moderator. With me here on the stage, we have Ali Wallace, we have Jared Taylor, myself, Teresa Newsom, Anthony Francis, Dexter Brown, and Zibia Amara. And yeah.
And who is not able to be with us this evening?
Mwaka.
Who is on the exhibit here?
It's easy exhibit without his work right there.
So with no further ado, here are the rules of engagement for tonight. I will start off with several questions for the curator specifically, and then I will have two special questions for each of the artists that are here on the stage with me. Because there's so many artists, I tried to formulate two really good questions that we can take our time to explore, so don't feel rushed through your answers to the question. We have up to an hour if we need that much time, but I want you to speak truthfully and wholly to the questions that are asked. And probably a little bit about me. I'm not an artist myself, unless you count singing in art form, but I do appreciate good art. My wife turned me on to a lot of wonderful artists. And every time we travel, whether it's locally or internationally, we always try to find either a gallery, a museum, or maybe some artisans that we can spend time with. Probably one of the most enjoyable moments was a couple of summers ago. We were in Jamaica, and we hired a private driver to take us to Kingston, and we got to enjoy the private garden and some refreshments at the home of a local jewelry artist. And she invited 3 other artisans to join us for that wonderful afternoon experience of just chatting and enjoying ginger drink and fresh mangoes and whatever else she had prepared that day in her personal garden at her home. So those are the things we do when we do travel. We try to make it an art experience, and I will say that I've learned a lot about art through my wife, because I was one of those guys that says, they want how much for what? but understanding the mindset and the concept and the work that goes into creating an art piece is very fascinating. So I try to gear my questions when I do these panels based on, if I want to know about an artist, what is it I would ask them so they could be forthcoming in what their motivation and inspiration is in regards to creating that piece of art. All right? So with that said, I'm going to start with a series of questions for our curator, Teresa Newsom. So Teresa, the title, Each of Us is Proof. How did you decide on the title and what you wanted it to speak to us about? And also, is there a reason that it is not capitalized?
So, Each of Us is Proof comes from a Alice Walker poem. I looked it up right before we started this. It is hard times require furious dancing. And within my own work, I reference Black artists, Black authors, Black writers, as well as a lot of biblical writing, I guess, and then how I title my work, how I title my series. And I felt that Each of Us is Proof just kind of summed up what I wanted this exhibition to be about. Each one of us represented here are present of our ancestry, right? We are descendants from generations and generations of people who have, that's what I'm gonna use, but overcome hardships to make it so we are here today. So Each of Us is Proof, kind of looking at the work, looking at the artists that I wanted to be a part of this exhibition, showing that each of us is proof that we are consistent, that we are here today as Black individuals, as artists, as just people in America.
Awesome. And that last part, what was the reason why you kept it all in lower cap? Or was there something significant about that, or am I just being ale?
I mean, it's partly aesthetics, because I do enjoy how everything is lowercase, kind of more intimate. But I was also thinking about the formality of having everything capitalized, like within the text, Each of Us is Proof. And I feel that having it all lowercase with a period at the end kind of contrasts grammatically correct writing, I guess. But also kind of inviting that intimacy within the work as well, like how you guys have all looked into the work, investigating it deeper as well, just inviting that intimacy and that closeness within the work.
All right, thank you for that response. So what instructions did you provide to the artists who are on the stage today to ensure that their submission aligned with your theme?
I didn't want anyone to make new work necessarily, because I know everyone in SAEAS, we have a show in January, so you guys will be making new work for that. But I wanted everyone to look into their personal archives, look at work that they've made in the past or more recently, and just seeing how they found connection with work they've made over however many years, and just see how it's represented within their own personal practice, not making work that I'm demanding them to make that kind of correlates with the theme of the work. Like me personally, this is work I made in grad school, and I don't think I've really publicly exhibited it since I was in grad school. So again, looking at my own personal archives, inviting everyone else to look in their personal archives as well.
Awesome. All right. There is no wrong or right answer to this next question, but speak to how you feel or if there was an influence based on this. So how, if at all, did the current state of the American experience play in the title for this exhibition? What we're seeing and going through in this current.
I think unconsciously or not, we all kind of navigate our way around what's going on in the world right now, especially over the past, year and a half, 2 years? Like, has it been 8 months? It's been about 8 months?
Just saying that long.
It's been years. Yeah, I just feel that indirectly, some of us make portraiture, still lifes, documentary, journalistic, landscapes, things like that. Directly or not, we are still thinking about what's going on in the world, how we're trying to navigate our way around this, trying to be very politically correct, very specific situation that we have going on. And yeah, just kind of trying to, I forgot the second part of your question.
How did it play into the title of the exhibition, if at all?
I guess it does in a lot of ways. Again, each of us is proof showing that despite everything, we're still taking the time to make work, to be photographers, to be artists, and not shying away from difficult or controversial conversations, and just showing our personal experiences, how we feel about what's going on in the world through our work and through our creative practice.
Oh, thank you for those responses to the 3 questions specifically for you. You will be a part of the additional questions as well. So I will be calling, but in no particular order, for your response to this next question. So I'm going to pick on Zemi first. Did I pronounce it correctly? Zemi?
Zemi, yes.
Zemi. Okay, thank you. So Zemi, how did you first develop an interest in photographic art, and what has been your transformational journey in the years you've been doing it?
I would say that, I guess, around high school, I got into it a little bit. I don't know, my high school years were really rough. So I needed an outlet to be able to just get my feelings out in a way. And through that, I don't know, it stuck. It just always stuck. It started off as oh, this is fun. I can go take pictures of the beach, but then the subject started to change. It went from landscape to people to art, In terms of my transformational journey and its connection to how I got into art as well, I feel like a lot of my work is, although it's art, it's so vulnerable and personal to me that it just feels like me just it's like journaling for me, It's like putting whatever I'm feeling literally into a photo, and to be able to articulate exactly what I want to say through a photo it's very healing for me. What was the second part of your question? Sorry.
Well, I'll just repeat the question. How did you first develop an interest in photographic art, and what has been your transformational journey from start to present?
I think the transformational journey for me would be, I'm very vocal now. I grew up very quiet. I grew up not wanting to speak up for myself or just speak at all. And I think the biggest transformational journey for me is being able to use my voice through my work, to be able to shout from the rooftops that this is my art, this is important work that I'm doing, and to believe it myself. I think it's been the biggest transformational journey for me.
You mentioned that this pretty much started when you were in high school. You had a pretty rough high school period. Was there and only if you wish to share with us in whatever way you want to share, what was it that made you decide that you needed to move into this direction to heal or to pacify whatever that hurt or that trauma or that situation was, if you care to share?
Yeah, I think it would be the fact that it had to mean something, I guess. Like, I was taking pictures and it was fun, but once I really, I don't know, it's like I would have these images in my head of, I've always been a very creative person, but I would always, there was a lack, I feel like, in terms of representation, in terms of how I saw myself, confidence, and all these things. And I think it was just really important for me to fill that gap, to be able to say, if I'm not seeing something, then I need to go make it, you know? That was the biggest thing for me in terms of all of my work. If I don't see it, I go make it. And I would literally yearn and wish to see certain images, to see certain representation, to see Black people happy and not traumatized and joyful and angelic and not demonized. So I created it, you know? Yeah.
So last question, and I'm sort of ad-libbing as I go along, as I hear different things. So of your pieces that are represented in this exhibit, which is your favorite and why?
That's really hard. I love all my pieces. They're like my little children.
Or if worst comes to worst, go with your first one. What did you create first and what was the motivation?
I think the one, I have two that really, really speak to me.
We'll allow you
This is
to
just so
have
hard. Three? I'm just kidding. Okay, the first one is gonna be the one on the back wall, all the way to the far right. My Brother Nature piece. That was the story. I think that story is just really heavy concerning that piece because it's so beautiful. It's so poetic. I was also going through a rough time during my adult years, and I shot that in 2023. Yeah, 2023. And I remember I was taking pictures, and I just wasn't figuring it out. And I was just like, it was just really hard. I was starting to get into editorial work, and I was looking for mentorship and direction. And sometimes the photography community can be very closed off in a way. And it was just really, really rough in terms of trying to get my photography to fit in with everyone else's. And I thought, I don't know, I was at the point where I was like, if I'm gonna shoot this, and if it doesn't look great, I'm just gonna quit. I'm just gonna give up. We're just gonna move on to the next artistic thing. I called a friend up, and I just took a chance. And it wasn't even a friend at the time, it was a stranger. And I said, hey, can I dye your hair green? And can I put flowers in it? And can I shoot it? And he said yes. And we woke up the next morning, and we shot this, and I had made a little TikTok on it and posted it, went to bed, and I woke up the next day, and it's got 500,000 views on TikTok. Wow. And it was like it was like God screaming at me, keep going. What you're doing, keep doing it. And the idea is so heavy because it shows a beautiful man, and he's got these flowers in his hair, and it's almost as if when you look into his eyes, you can just see the stillness, the calmness, the strength, the resilience. And I think when I shot that was my reminder to take care of my mental health and to nurture my mind, to nurture my head, my art, all of it, to just continue to nurture myself, because that is exactly what it's like to have mental health. Sometimes the flowers die, but they come back and bloom. So that's a really personal piece for me. And then my other piece are the two over here. It's a series.
Okay.
My Black Hysteria series. That was something that was just kind of very contrast to everything on this wall, because there's a lot of rage in it, a lot of anger. And as Black women, it's very difficult for us to sometimes just be angry. and not only be angry, but be angry without feeling guilty about it or without shame. And that was when I said, I'm gonna just let it all out, you know? It's very personal. It's a lot of things that a lot of Black women and a lot of Black girls go through. And I just felt like it was important for us to highlight Black hysteria, Black anger, Black rage without it being shamed or demonized. And yeah.
Awesome. I'm one of those nosy people, so I ask a lot of questions. So when I go visit with artists, I want to hear their story because it helps me appreciate the art and the value of that art and all the creativity that goes into it. Otherwise, it's just another piece of something on a piece of something.
Absolutely.
To me. But when I hear the personal story behind the piece, my wife knows there's one piece at our house, in our collection, that it's very subjective, and it was by an artist named Charlotte Webb out of Atlanta. And I asked her what it was about. And she said, what does it say to you? So I thought that was kind of interesting, so I shared with her what I thought it was, and she said, well, that works for you. So she and it basically just boiled down to whatever moves you to be inspired by the piece, i.e. buy the piece, which we did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So whenever people come over to the house, I make sure they go see that piece and say, what do you see? And then when they tell me their story, which is usually nothing close to what my story is, I still feel compelled to tell them what I see.
Absolutely.
Which I think is
I like how you continue to carry the torch.
Absolutely. Still probably to this day my favorite piece in all the collections that we have.
When you said that you're lighting, the silent majorities, you're lighting their fire?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
You're sort of letting the silent majority, you're sort of lighting their fire. They see that and they
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. And we'll have a chance for Q&A at the end as well. So it's interesting how you guys lined up in the seats because it follows my name list, which you guys didn't know about before. So the same question is going to be up for Mr. Dexter, and I'll repeat the question. How did you first develop an interest in photographic art, and what has been your transformational journey? And of course, I'll ask you your favorite piece and what that says to you.
My interest wasn't just in photography. My interest is in capturing things. How do I capture things? Many ways. I used to catch bumblebees in a jar to watch them, to see them. I used to capture birds by putting little traps under there and feed them and run out of the trap. And as far as photography started, it started with me while I was in college. And I had my first son, and I wanted to freeze a moment with my first son, Aaron. I still have that photograph. It's one of my favorites. So that's how it began.
Mm-hmm.
It took a hiatus because of life, but it's always in the back of my mind, oh, that's a beautiful picture. That is a beautiful picture. So, with respect to capturing or taking photos, I think they capture me as much as I captured them. Because the moment draws me and I can see a beautiful sunset and say, oh, that's beautiful. And it's that moment in time that counts. If I miss that moment, it will never come again. So not only does it drives me to always be prepared to capture a moment, it also prepares me to allow the moment to capture me.
Mm-hmm.
Because photography is not just a shooting point. It's a matter of perspective. All of us can see the same image and shoot it in some different way that makes it unique unto them. So that's why my passion because it's what my eyes see, what my mind sees. Well, what moves me about this image at this particular time. 5 minutes from now, it's a whole different image.
Mhm.
So what is it that moves me enough to capture it at that particular time? And hopefully those same things that move me will move you when you see it.
So has there been a major transformational moment in your career, in your photographic career?
Yes. Once my family boys were mostly gone and time availed itself even more to me, I took advantage by going out and taking things. You know, sometimes I go out looking for a scene. Other times a scene finds me. Okay? For example, I have several pictures up there dealing with the civil rights movement and capturing those things. Now, I've walked by those pictures on several occasions and never really hit me but at some point it says, here I am. Shoot me, take me. And that's the difference. Again, it's not my first time looking at it. It's not my first time through that park. But it's the first time they grabbed me.
So it may have taken several experiences of seeing that image before it really piqued your desire to want to capture it.
It's not so much several experiences. I think the way the sun was that day. The way the shadows managed themselves on that day, at that particular time. Yeah, we can all see things. I see things in the daylight that doesn't reveal some of the things that catch me during the shadows during the evening. That's why I was telling somebody here, I love black and white pictures. There's something about a black and white pictures that separate the light from the dark, and you find the interesting parts in the grays of the picture. So that's time, and that's a matter of things grabbing you rather than you going out seeking to take a picture. Sometimes I go out looking for a photograph and never find anything. And sometimes when I'm least experiencing it, there's a blue jay just landing on the fence. You know, there's an owl or something. Or, in my backyard, I've got hawks, and occasionally they'll just sit on the corner of a roof and say, "Here I am." That's me. The moon is shining just right that I want to capture. So those are the things. I'm not just driven by the act of photographing. It's the act of allowing the photograph to draw me in.
Do you have a favorite piece of work that's here on the exhibit? And what makes it special for you?
I don't know. I was thinking about that when you asked her.
We can pick the Niagara Falls one if you want.
Oh, you like the Niagara Falls, and it's nice. I agree. It makes a statement, but I think for me, given that I was born and raised literally down the street from when all of this happened in Birmingham, I think the one on the wall over there with the bars speaks more to me, because at the bottom of it says, "I ain't afraid of your jails," which basically say we're moving forward regardless. It speaks to hope, and it speaks to not cowering down as we once had.
Sounds like we can use that in today. Not cowering down, not being afraid of jails and whatever else they want to throw our way. All right. One thing I will say that when I was looking at especially the Niagara Falls piece, and you and I were talking about that, because a lot of times with photography, there's so much, I'm going to use this term loosely, there's so much trickery.
Yeah.
and so much doctoring. And when I look at the Niagara piece, it looks like there may have been several images that were put on top of each other. And when you shared with me, no, that's the actual image from this specific space or place at Niagara Falls that allowed me to capture everything you see in the picture. So I was very impressed that you were able to catch that, and it's real. It's not doctored. And I've been to Niagara Falls, and it's a beautiful experience. So if you've never been to Niagara Falls, put it on your bucket list. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. All right. Let's move on to Mr. Anthony Francis. Same question. How did you first develop an interest in photographic art, and what has been your transformational journey?
Yeah, I think at least the way that I want to kind of speak to it today, I was kind of at a crossroads creatively where I was thinking about, I had written poetry for a while, and I'm an English undergrad, but I had started making photographs, and I was about to go to grad school, and I thought about whether or not I wanted to go to a writing program or a photography program for grad school. And I had most recently been making photographs, and I decided to go with photography, especially considering how accessible poetry was to me at that time. You know, I felt like it was something that I could do and kind of lean into, whereas going to a photography program, at the moment anyways, felt like it was a little bit more involved, right? Or a little something that you needed to kind of engage in and have access to. So that is kind of, things went from there, not in any linear fashion, but kind of, you know, things have a way of kind of ebbing and flowing. But I was making a lot of work then, trying to learn how to make photographs. So that is kind of how things started. As far as anything pivotal or transformative, I think what happened to me, I moved here in 2012 from North Carolina. My wife was military, and we had our first child. And I think I started thinking about, I've got a studio, and I started thinking about photography as specifically portraiture, right? And the thing is that portraiture, and kind of speaking to your point about photography, which opens up a whole other can of worms in terms of thinking about trickery, but photography is a performance as well, right? And I think I found out that I was really interested in, and I talked to my students about this as well, I'm interested in the performance of photography, right? Like using a camera to engage, right? All of us use instruments to engage with people, and I was interested in photography as a means of engagement with people. And photography is a problem, right? Photography creates problems. It creates a one-way conversation. It has a way of exerting power onto sitters and people that are in front of the camera. So then the question becomes, anybody that's interested in equity or love or the distribution of power, you have to kind of engage with photography in understanding how it works, right? Its history even as well, right? Photography works in a hegemonic space, right? Like it does. It's a medium, right? It's a medium within media, right? So who culturally controls the way that we even read images, right? So we have to be careful about that as photographers. So what's become really important for me, and I'm gonna tell you, I do not have a favorite, so I'm gonna tell you that right now before we even get there. But I'm really interested in the privileged space within the performance of photography. And what I mean by that is like I'm interested in working in a way that is for and with the people that I make photographs with, right? How do you show, how do you reveal, and how do you keep, right? Those things seem to be contradictory, but I'm interested in some of the same things that all of us that are up here are interested in, right? We're interested in culture, we're interested in in the complexity of blackness. We're interested in what that means in some ways. But we're artists, right? So we want to reveal something, we want to show something, we want to express something. But with every artist that you run into, every artist is trying to keep something, right? And so if you look at my work, you'll notice that there is ambiguity, there's obfuscation, there's redaction. There is a leaning on the kind of expansion of the frame in some ways to where there are things that you can't see. And so I'm really interested, much like poetry in a way, to where I'm interested in the figurative language, I'm interested in the imperfections of photography. And as much as I know that photography is used as a tool to exploit people, to expose people, to in many ways dominate people, I'm interested in perhaps breaking the language of photography in many ways. And so a lot of my photographs, they don't read in any definite way, hopefully, if I've done it correctly. Hopefully they feel a certain way. Hopefully they can be challenging to read, and that is because there are a performance of the people that are within that space, right? And so I'm just interested in that. I'm interested in doing things that photography in some ways was never meant to do, right? And in some ways I'm interested in photography's failure, you know, so. And hopefully, but at the same time, I'm an artist, so I'm expressing things, so I'm hoping that people feel it when they see it, even if they don't exactly know what it is that I'm communicating.
You mentioned earlier the power of photography and the one-sided conversation that photographs can create.
Yeah.
Was there an image in your past that you saw that spoke to you, that basically spoke to what you just said about the power of photography?
Yeah.
And that conversation that it created in your mind?
Well, much like, in some ways, all of the images. I mean, all of the things that we see, right? Like as a photographer in some ways, and anybody that's an expert or well learned in anything that you do, what we end up doing when we spend time with any type of vocation or any act or performance over time, what we realize is that many people do not have the intimate understanding of what it is that we do, right? So if you're a doctor, most people don't know medicine. If you are a journalist, many people don't know how to really critically analyze the information that's in front of them. So for me, what I look at is, I look at images. I look at images and how they work, how they transmit power. And so for me, whether I can remember very early on looking at National Geographic, right? But then coming to a point to where I understood in some ways that National Geographic has always exoticized the things that it turned its lens on, right? People of foreign lands, and it became like this place of desire. I can think about Carrie Mae Weems and the work that she did with Harvard's archive of enslaved people. And so I think about that. I think about any image that somebody thinks a person is sexy in or attractive in. Those things are problems, right? Because what is beauty? What is desire, right? And so I'm always thinking about those things. I'm thinking about who says what and who gives them authority and how we are seduced by ideas of truth. So it can go on. Sometimes it's not an image. Sometimes it's a song. Sometimes it's a sound. Sometimes it's, you know, a word in some ways, right? Having a background in English, I think about how words are made, right? How words are given authority. So I think about those things all the time. So that's what I'm trying to do. Those same images that I see, I'm trying to figure out how's that power work, right? And how do we redistribute it? How do we love through the work that we make? How do we, you know, who we working for, who we working with is all I'm always asking. Who you doing that for? You know, who you doing it with? And that's really important for me all the time.
Great. Thank you so much for that response. All right, let's move on to Mr. Jared. Same question, how did you first develop an interest in photographic art, and what has been your transformational journey?
Okay, so let me set the stage for y'all. It's 2014, and I have just been gifted my first iPhone. And around that same time, an app called Instagram starts to pop up, and I start taking photos. And they're not really good. They're just like photos of an Arizona like tea, or like a video game I'm playing, or maybe a sunset, maybe something artistic. But that's when I first got exposed to taking a photo and then putting it out into the world and saying, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm looking at. And I'm very Gen Z, so a lot of it is, you know, my friends are also posting things, and I'm liking their stuff, and it's cool. And then I take my first photography class when I was a senior in high school. And then I learned, oh, there's a history behind this, there's an actual artistic vision to all this, there's a reason this even exists. And I learned to I didn't learn a whole lot in that class. I didn't learn a lot, but I learned to show up and submit 6 photos every 2 days. It was like a 3-week or a 3-day-a-week class. And the rule was you take 6 photos of anything you want, and then you put them on a flash drive, and then we all look at them, and we all analyze them. And I would go out to places. I would go to the Central Library in San Antonio, and I would go to parks, and I would go to places where I thought, okay, here's an area that I can take something in. And I would do that every, 2 days. So I learned to, not any stylistic expertise, but just show up and do things. Show up to places, go to places, turn in something, do anything you want. And I was able to generate my craft that way. So fast forward to this year, and I'm starting to, my dad gifts me his old DSLR camera. And so now this is my first real camera. This is my first actual, I can adjust the aperture, I can adjust the shutter speed, I can adjust the f-stop, I can adjust the ISO, everything. And then I say, okay, how far can I take this? And I was watching Instagram and YouTube, and there's a guy that goes around and takes photos of strangers in just the city, and hey, can I take a photo of you? And I'm very, shy sometimes, so I wanted to generate that confidence to say, go up to someone and say, hey, can I take this? So the opportunity came where I went to a cosplay event for an anime convention here in San Antonio, and those guys love being taking photographs. Those guys love it because hey, I worked really hard on this piece, on this design, right, outfit, and please take photos of me. I want people to see this. And so I was like, fine, I'll do it, sure. And I did that, and I didn't do it. It was a 3-day weekend, right? So on Friday, nervous, didn't want to do it at all. I'm taking photos of anything else. Saturday comes around, I'm like, all right, I need to do this. I need to just go up to someone. So I did one person, and then from that point on, it was easy. It was like, okay, I was going up to people I didn't even know the show they were even doing a cosplay for, but they looked really nice. And so I said, okay, I don't know who you are, but you did a really good job at whatever this is, so I need to record this. So I did, and the more I do it, the more I talk to people, the more I ask people, is it okay if I do this? It gets easier for me. And that's what I want to do in the end, is do portraits, and I want to do street photography and cityscapes. And that's what I would like to do. And going over all this and getting gifted the iPhone, getting gifted the DSLR, getting gifted with opportunities, because I went to San Japan a couple weeks ago, and the same thing. I was able to take photos of people easily, and it was great. I'm posting them now on my page. But the way I want to transform is, I want to not do it I want to do it for art. Right now I'm doing it for engagement. Right now I'm doing it for performance. Right now I'm doing it for other people can look at it and say, oh, this is good. I want to get to a point where I take a photo and I don't care if someone doesn't like it. I don't care if the audience will come last. If I see it and I think it's good, I'm putting it out there. If it gets engagement, awesome, excellent. If it doesn't, that's okay, because I did it. And I say, this is good, it's my art, and I want to do this. Regardless of what anybody says, I just want to put it out there. So when I want to transform, I want to go more off of artistic vibes and less off of, will somebody else like this? And that's where I want to go forward with that. So that's pretty much where I want to take this.
So you mentioned in 2019 you were in this class
Yes.
and you didn't learn anything.
No, not as,
Was it because the teacher was bad or you were not focused and motivated to learn what you needed to learn?
no, I want to learn, but it was a school system here. There's, when you're trying to control a class of 30, and it's very difficult. So I don't blame the teacher at all. I think I learned rule of thirds. That's what stuck with me the most, was rule of thirds. I was like, oh, that's good. That is a good method. That's awesome.
So
that's
would
about
you
it.
say that the majority of those 30 kids that were in that class thought it was one of those easy classes
yeah.
that they can just,
Yeah.
so they really weren't
No,
serious about it?
okay, so
And you
some,
sort of fell into that.
oh, have I got the story? So somebody on Snapchat.
The short version.
Right, sorry. So someone on Snapchat, you could do a social media page, right? So it's another social media thing. Someone took a screenshot of somebody else's photo and submitted that for the class. And I was like, this is my competition? This is what I'm doing against? Okay, I got this. I got it. So yeah, that's how I got into it.
So do you have a favorite piece on exhibit here?
Ironically, the one that fell. There's,
The one in the corner?
oh, no, the last one back there. It's
Oh, the one that fell off the wall.
Yeah, that blank space right there. That one is really good. I liked it. I like the way the sky came out. I like the way that it, because that church that I took a photo of is very important to me too. It's a very impactful church in my family's history. I hadn't been back there since 2012 when my grandmother passed away. That's where we had the funeral. I hadn't been back since then. But when I got the call that, hey, we're doing this thing, I was like, oh, I know exactly where to go. So I went down there and took those photos. But it's a very important building, very important, historical point in my family's history. So I liked it. But that photo of the sky and the church and all the signage, that is my favorite because it just encapsulates everything.
And it has a personal meaning to you as well.
Yeah, very personal meaning. Correct.
Very good. Mr. Wallace. Now, he may get mad at me for saying this, but he's the San Antonio legendary photographic journalist and photographic artist. He's looking at me funny. But we had a wonderful conversation. He shared with me a lot of his life history. So, Mr. Wallace, this is for you. Same question. How did you first develop an interest in photographic art, and what has been your transformational journey?
Well, we were just cotton pickers, picking cotton all day long, trying to make 100 pounds, $2.50. And my mother said one day, boy, you're going to be our family photographer. It's $10, go down to the drugstore and buy you a camera so you can document family activities. So, hey, there's the camera. Now, what did I do? How do I learn how to operate this thing? And of course, the gentleman that showed me how to operate the machine did a beautiful job of getting me to push the right buttons and all that kind of stuff and practice things and so on. So anything that got in my way, I photographed. Sunsets, all that kind of stuff. Water, flowers, plants, the family, weddings to that point where I'm shooting weddings and maybe get $1 or $2, doing family meetings. I was just at a family gathering celebrating 64 years of marriage. And the son didn't cooperate. We had, I guess, maybe 50 people. And today, how sunny it was, trying to find a location where you can take a picture of 50 people, and how hot it was today. It was just a miracle that we were able to accomplish that task. But all in all, wanting to be a great photographer is, I thought it was just point and shoot. But after going into service for some 23 years, I learned as a laboratory technician, and secondary MOS was photography. I learned from other photographers. The Army would send me to school 90 days out of the year and pay for it. And that's where I learned with different photographers how their techniques were utilized and things of that sort. Even in black and white photography, I met a gentleman named Ansel Adams that invited me to come and train with his photographers I was at a workshop in Monterey, California, and I'm the only black in there. And the little guy walked in the door, and he's standing in the door. And all the white folks came to attention. And I'm wondering, well, what's going on? And I was looking at the door to see what was the problem. And the little guy saw me, and he started walking toward me. And he came up to me and said, "My name is Ansel Adams, and what are you doing in here?" Well, I almost started trembling. This guy's crazy. You know, he said, "Look, I'd like to invite you to Yosemite National Park to do a week course with his photographers." And of course, he was doing black and white photographers at that time. And he shook my hand and left, and my brother said, "Sarge, don't wash your hands." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Don't you know that's the God of photography?" And he invited you to come and train with his photographers in Yosemite National Park. Well, I'm an E8, trying to make E9, got 23 years in service, trying to get 26, got orders to go back to Europe for another 4 years. This is gonna complete my Army career. Went home to tell my wife, "Baby, we're going back to Europe." And she said, "Bye." "You going?" So I had to make a decision, because at this time, well, she had been in Europe with me before, but we didn't have any kids. At this time, we had 2 kids. She wanted to finish her degree at Incarnate Word in home economics, and that's why she didn't want to go back to Europe for another 4 years, and I realized that. So I talked with God about my retiring or staying in the Army, and I decided that I was going to retire and had 2 desires. One was to do music ministry in the prison system, because that was my training in college, music, Texas Southern University. And plus I had a band, and my brother was playing with me, played guitar. I learned how to play a piano, and man, we was traveling all over, from Houston, Texas, 5th Ward, coming up to San Antonio to play for the Air Force Band, that type of thing. But at this point now, well, I got to make this decision, and I asked God to let me do 2 things. One, I want to do music ministry in prison system, because music was, after looking over my span of life, I had been in music for a long time. I had, a lady had a piano, and she asked my mother if she wanted to buy the piano. And my mother said, yeah, she'd buy it on time, and just put it in the house. My mother said, boy, you're going to be our family photographer. Here's $10, go down to that bookstore and buy you a camera. Now, we're cotton pickers, you know. 100 pounds of cotton, if you pick that, that's $2.50. Now I got this camera, I'm shooting things, you know, make a little money here and there. And now I'm a professional. I wanted to do just photography work, shoot anything. Right now I'm shooting clouds. I'm looking for a big cloud. I'm looking for that special cloud. I've seen Abraham Lincoln in the clouds. I've seen a lot of people in the clouds. I almost saw myself in the cloud, you know. But it is a matter of, the thing is, as a photographer, I'm looking for something. I'm looking for a picture. If I go to a zoo, I'm looking for a picture. You might see one of my pictures, I don't think it's up here, but you might see one of my pictures just of a butterfly. You might see one of my pictures of just something plain. But a lot of times with myself is driving along, and all of a sudden in the clouds, there's a picture. I'm going 75 miles an hour. All I can say is, God, thank you for showing me that. I can't stop right now. But God has a plan to show you things, you know, show you things. And as a photographer, I'm looking for something to photograph. I've covered the Martin Luther King March in writing for the past 38 years. One of my great pictures, I think it is great pictures, the gentleman right there, Reverend Black. He was this black and white picture. And he was a tremendous speaker. He was for our Martin Luther King March guest speaker. And I traveled with him just all over San Antonio as he preached, you know, and made his movements, trying to get people to convert them to Jesus Christ and that type of thing. And I like to take pictures of water, moving water, and I learned that from Ansel Adams' group, how to photograph moving water and make it look like, you know, beautiful. This exhibit here was mainly of Martin Luther King, marching rallies, things that I've done. One over there is I was a guest soloist, I was a concert artist doing Negro spirituals. And of course, that was my other desire, music ministry. And I got a chance to travel all over Texas with Texas prisons and doing music concerts in nursing homes and things of that sort. So between music and photography, I was flipping back and forth trying to do both of those things, be proficient in both of those things. A lot of times, when I look back over my career, and as I look in my 4 storages, 1 storage, all photographs, 2nd storage, all photographs, 3rd storage, all photographs and CDs and things of that sort, because I'm a songwriter. Well, I wondered, you know, how did I do all of that? At the age of 91 right now, almost 91. And I wonder how I did all that, and I wish I had all that money back. It's there. So we're trying to have my neighbors are trying to help me set up a gallery for people to see some of those things. Not knowing Rosa Parks was our first guest speaker for Martin Luther King marching rally, and I was the volunteer photographer with the city of San Antonio. That was 1987. I was just volunteering, but we started the march, and I was the photographer. Rosa Parks was our first guest speaker. Not knowing there's a museum in town, SAEAS, and they bought one picture from me of Rosa Parks when she was speaking here in San Antonio. I think it was something like $5,000 for the picture. And I said, praise the Lord. I told my daughter, I said, baby, you know, when I die, because my wife had passed on, I said, when I die, you got all of this. She said, Dad, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to open the door and say, y'all come and get him. I said, no, you know, that's my work. She said, no, that's what she's going to tell him to call. A friend called my daughter and told her that SAEAS is in town and they're looking for Mr. Wallace. They want some of his Martin Luther King images. And my daughter called me and said, Dad, I'm coming down to help you find some of those Martin Luther King pictures. But, you know, it's just the opportunity that those 2 opportunities, music and photography. My mother brought a piano and put it in the house. And my brother played guitar. And he said, boy, go over there and bang on that thing. And I went over there and looked at it. And I saw them big old black keys. And I started banging on those big old black keys. I think I was about 11 years old. And when he played guitar, B.B. King, 8 Mouth Brown, anything behind his ear, behind his head, all on the floor. And 2 guys stopped by our house and said, man, we heard y'all playing. I said, y'all want a gig? I said, man, what's a gig? You know, we're cotton pickers. What's a gig? He said, you're playing a juke joint up here. I said, well, how much do you pay? He said, we pay each of y'all $5 a piece. Well, in the cotton patch, if you pick 100 pounds of cotton, that's $2.50. And I said, how much do you pay? He said, $5. I said, you play all day or play all night? He said, no, just about 3 hours. I said, yeah, we want a gig, trying to get out of the cotton patch, you know.
So was that with your mother or your grandmother's blessing to play in the juke joint?
Not at that time.
Or was that what they don't know, don't hurt them?
But when I said to my mother, they're gonna pay us $5 a piece, she said, okay. And the guys came down and picked us up, took us down to the old juke joint. I dusted the old piano off, but we were studying. The guy was studying at Texas Southern University, saxophone player from New York City. We met him. He said, guys, we're going to kick off with Perdido. And I asked my brother, what's Perdido? He said, I don't know what that is. He said, we're going to do it in B flat. Again, I asked my brother, I said, man, what's B flat? He said, I don't know what that is either. And he kicked off a jazz tune. Ba-da-da, 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 ba-da-da. He stopped, say, okay. He said, guitar player, you got a good ear. You can pick up what we're doing. He said, but the piano player, close the damn piano and sit down on it. And I saw my $5 take wings. He just blew right on out the door. But I came to explain to him. I said, look, man, you know, what happened was two guys, the bass player and the drummer, they passed by my house and we were playing and they heard us.
Mm-hmm.
But God did a work on their ear. And it's a biblical story. And the biblical story that in the old time, people used to, our army used to surround the city and wouldn't let nobody in, let nobody come out. Well, they kicked the 4 lepers outside the city. And the lepers standing out said, now look, man, if we stay here, we're gonna die. But there's some soldiers over there, they got money, they got food, they got water. And if we go over there, they might kill us too, but we're gonna die anyway. And so they started walking toward the army's camp. And the guard magnified their steps to a point where the army thought our army was coming. And they ran off and left the water and the food. And this is what happened to these two guys. They passed our house, and what they heard, God magnified it to a point where they said, these guys are great. They don't need no rehearsal. They are geniuses. And they hired us on the spot. So I explained that to the band leader. And he said, look, man, you come around, and I'll teach you how to play the piano so you can play the blues with us. And you gotta put in this voice and you can be our vocalist also. So
And you had the blessing of your mother and your grandmother.
Yes.
Now, did you get a chance to take some photos in the juke joint?
I sure did. Yes,
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
All the dances and all that.
Okay.
Of course, you know, you get all that experience. You get all the experience about, well, Mr. Wallace bring the band, Little Richard, Little Richard, all those guys coming through.
Yeah.
But what I remember mostly is Mr. Wallace, bring your band at 12 o'clock. The dancers from Las Vegas are going to come in. We got about 20 dancers coming in at 12 o'clock. So I told everybody to be there at 12 o'clock, and we were waiting for these dancers to get off the bus.
Yeah.
Man, good Lord.
Well, that sounds like a totally different conversation altogether. So for the sake of
I
time,
was reaching for my camera then.
Okay.
I was reaching for my camera then. The only problem was they were all female impersonators.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds like a unique exhibition all to itself. So we do have one more artist I want to get to before the hour gets old, but definitely a good conversation. So we're going to move to our curator, Ms. Teresa Newsom, and get her take on the question. You want to, whichever mic you want to use.
Okay.
All right. Let me repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. How did you first develop an interest in photographic art, and what has been your transformational journey?
So I went to UIW here, and I got my BFA in studio art with a concentration in drawing, and I minored in psychology. And within the UIW fine art program, you have to take at least one photo class. And every semester, it's like, I'm gonna push this back because I'm dreading it. Everyone dreaded taking darkroom because Kathy Vargas, who still teaches photo at UIW, she does darkroom, 35, like she does not do anything but digital. So all of us would just dread it because at some point we had to take it. And so my junior year, I was like, I'll get it over with. And I took darkroom and I just fell in love with the entire process. Before I knew anything about photography, my only experience was like point and shoot cameras, just taking pictures with very, very early smartphones, because this was in like 2013, 2014. So after learning about history photography, Kathy also taught the history photography class at UIW, and learning just I'm gonna call it the beautiful history of history photography, dating back, to like the early 1800s. And just falling in love with the medium. Like, I still got my degree in drawing, but from that point, I viewed myself as a photographer. After that, I took a year off. I was still making images, mainly digital. During that time at UIW, that was when they did that whole renovation of the Fine Arts Building. And so the last year I took photo, it had to be digital. We didn't have access to a darkroom or anything like that. So then I learned how to use a DSLR and my 35, and that just really changed how I perceive photography as well. So I took a year off, then I went to Texas Women's to get my master's, and I was in between wanting to get my master's in art therapy with a concentration in photography or art, or just going ahead and get my MFA in photography. And I don't know, like I was talking to my mom about it, and just like really thinking about it, and it's like, I want to be an artist. I wanted to be an artist my entire life, but I also love psychology, and I just bit the bullet and went to Texas Women's, got my degree in photography. So Texas Women's is a PWI, so I was the only Black artist, I think I'm still the only Black artist who's been to that program in the past 6-7 years. So it was really interesting kind of navigating my way through critiques, through kind of crafting my own creative process. I always say that 2014 really changed my perspective of photography and how I make my work. During that time, Mike Brown was killed, Alton Sterling was killed due to police brutality. Trayvon Martin also passed due to racism. And so when I was, I believe, in my senior year of college, I started making this work about these objects that these individuals had in their possession and how that related to their untimely death or due to racial violence or police brutality. And I kind of held that with me for a long time when I was in grad school and then after I graduated, and it really changed how I viewed photography. Like, again, just like, point and shoot or just taking beautiful images, but being able to tell a story with my work, being able to have a conversation with the viewers who were looking at my work as well. Like, I always tell my students that photography is a language. Like, I can take as many images as I want, but once I show them to a gallery exhibition, to a portfolio review, something like that, we're having a conversation about the work that I've created. So that's when I started really delving into history with my work, think about the past. A lot of my work is mentioning history and research. I do a lot of research, as well as just personal anxieties that I have, like the work that's across the room.
The pomegranate.
At the pomegranate, that's from my Sim series that I made while I was in grad school, which was a great critique conversation as well, again at a PWI, about Dr. Marion Sims, who was considered the father of gynecology.
What year was that?
When I was in grad school?
No, doctors.
Oh, like in the mid-1800s, like 1850s, 1860s?
Okay.
Okay, so like historical. So he was known as the father of gynecology, and what's the word I'm gonna use? He invented or kind of did research on the findings of the speculum due to more or less torturing these 4 Black women who were enslaved over a certain number of years, doing all these experiments on them, again, without their consent, and relating that to my own anxieties, which again is kind of being passed down through generation of Black women's anxiety and kind of resistance, I guess, of going to the doctor, and especially, reproductive health, childbirth, things like that. And I have my own anxiety regarding doctors, gynecological visits, things like that. And so doing that research, understanding how Dr. Marion Sims conducted his research, how the speculum, which is still used today, was created, and that kind of thing, I kind of wanted to revisualize my own anxieties and how I felt about how Black women's bodies throughout history has been kind of manipulated, tortured, and just kind of cast aside for the progression, I guess, of medical advancement. So thinking about pomegranates, thinking about this fertile fruit, this biblical fruit, that's you know, we consume it. It's also the black bodies being consumed, being destroyed. Just kind of having that conversation using symbols as a language regarding my anxieties and just kind of broadening the history of the victims, I guess, of Dr. Marion Sims. So I do a lot of work with research is what I'm trying to say. And again, trying to create a story or creating a story or kind of a narrative based on my anxieties, what's gone on within American history for hundreds of years as well.
Okay. Yeah, when you and I were walking through on Thursday to sort of set up this event for tonight, that was the piece that captured me. And of course, I was inquisitive to find out because I knew there was something deep about the reason why there was stitching in the pomegranate, and the fact that you chose pomegranate, which is full of seeds as part of its fruit, and you shared that story with me. And that's what I enjoy about meeting with artists and talking with artists, to really get their perspective on what motivated them into creating their pieces. So with that said, and thank you all for indulging this very informative conversation with all the artists. So with that said, you learned a lot about each and every one of them. What questions do you have now for any of the artists that are on the panel this evening? Yes, I saw too.
So, Anthony, you mentioned that now, if I understand, you are
Can everybody hear?
thinking more and considering how to have more of a dialogue or an interaction with the subjects of your photos. Because I did understand that correctly. So, talk to me a little bit about how that plays out in the creative process.
So a lot of times, a lot of my work has to do, I'll give an example of a video that I made. I think it's online, but I've never shown it. It's kind of like when you come up with an idea, you have a concept, you're thinking about things that you want to communicate, you have to figure out what the aesthetics of that are. And so a lot of the redaction, right, is based off of the idea that we're in this kind of space together in some ways. So one example is this video that I made. I was recording the conversations that we were having in the studio during these photo shoots, and I cut all of the volume out except for these conversations. So you would see these portraits of people in this video, but you wouldn't hear anything except this conversation that you can't see, right? And so that would be an example. Another example would be a recent video that I did was, well, I look at kind of like what Teresa's saying. I spend a lot of time looking at gestures, how people communicate with their bodies. And then I think about like how that can be very definite in some ways. Like, what does happiness look like? What does nervousness look like? And then we go into the studio and I communicate. We create gestures that are somewhere in between. And so something that's both and neither speaks to possibilities. And so the viewer has to read it in a way that really exposes the reader more than what happens in the photograph, right? Like, and that's what happens all the time, but we don't really think about that, which is when you go and look at a work of art, you're really just speaking of your experiences. That's all you have to communicate. And so I'm trying to elicit that, like elicit the reading of it in some ways, right? Where there is no definite because there's nothing but possibility in some ways. So there's this tension that I'm trying to arrive at. And usually the person that's sitting knows exactly what the concept is. And so since they know the concept, then we're in on it and the viewer has to kind of project themselves. So I hope that makes sense.
So you're making the audience work more, or at least to be more conscious of the work.
Oh yeah, always. Like I say, I was just talking to a homie that's also a student, and I was like, yo, I don't want you to understand it, I just want you to feel it. You know, I mean, honestly, like the if I can make you feel something, then I'm doing my job, but I don't want you to really just, you know, I don't know, I want to hold something. I want to keep something. And I think that as an artist, we always do that. And I think in some ways, like, there's always that impossibility of you knowing. I had a conversation with somebody today, not trying to be long-winded, but it's like, most of what we think we know is what we believe. Right? Like, we don't really know a lot of things. Most of what we think we know is just belief. We're taking a leap, you know what I mean? And so I'm just leaning into that, and listening to myself. But like I said, if you look at any of my photographs now, you'll notice that there's always there are people doing things together, like that image on the wall over there. There are people doing things together, and you don't know what they're doing. Like, that's metaphor. Or there'll be people with limbs outside the frame, right? There's always a world outside the frame. But a lot of times we read a photograph as being all inclusive of the information that's there, right? As exposition, right? But there's always something outside of the frame. So I'm just saying, I'm making work that in some ways you don't have all the access to it, and that's what I'm trying to communicate.
Yes, ma'am. Glory.
I appreciate being here tonight, and I appreciate the beautiful art. And it's not easy work, I can tell that. But like you mentioned, you want us to feel it. And that's a very good point. I'm concerned about the copyright as well. When you've done the work and then your viewers are able to photocopy it, pull off the cameras and what have you, when they really shouldn't be doing that. And they are trying to get the credit instead of you getting the credit. So have you all been able to get the copyright or what in terms of your work? And not only that, I believe you graduated from UIW.
Yes, ma'am.
And took classes in photography.
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe you went to high school and was into a photography class, but didn't really do very well at that particular time. But look at you now. You went to high school and took a photography class, right? All right. So that's letting me know that you all are learning something in high school. Which is really good, phenomenal. But in terms of copyright, can you share that with me as well? Anybody?
I can speak to a little bit in grad school. Like in the digital space, in some ways, that is a lot harder to access in terms of copyright. But at the same time, I would say, just personally, because I know Dexter's going to say something, I don't worry about it, honestly. Like, I mean, I think I work commercially, so as well, right? My artwork, usually if we're selling something or something is being moved around, then you have copyright, as long as you can prove copyright, right? Like if we go to court, then that's always going to be, the burden of proof is going to be with somebody that has taken something, right? Whereas many of us, at the same time, it originates with us, right? And then the other thing is, like, there are, like, you can mail, I don't know if anybody here has done that, but you can mail copyrights, you can buy copyrights for your work, you can register your work. It is a lot more complicated in some ways to do that now, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, I think in varying degrees our work is being copyrighted.
Also the metadata, like depending on
Exactly.
what software you're
Yeah.
working.
Proof of your work, especially today in the digital world, is embedded in what's called metadata. And that is, these digital cameras have the ability to capture even down to the time of day that you took a photograph.
That's right.
And also the geographical location that you took that photograph in, which you can go back and prove that it's your original photograph rather than someone else. Because if they copy that photograph, they lack that metadata, that proof that it belongs to them. So that's, and besides, whenever you print something, most people will say all rights reserved or something like that in a photograph.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Everyone good?
I got one.
Yes.
Anthony, if your mama was in the audience, would you change that? What was your favorite photo?
No.
What? I thought that was the beginning, that's mine, right?
Yeah, no,
Okay,
it
you're
is.
not
I
gonna
mean,
change that answer?
you know, honestly, I actually started working on a piece of writing the other day, and I was like, one of the things that I think is important, and it's a concession that I think all artists make, is that what you communicate at a given moment, right, is all you, right? And so I think, because sometimes we don't want to put something out for fear of it not representing us holistically in some ways, through space, through time. But I think it's like, you know, it's about that moment in some ways, right? So a lot of times when I think about the work, I don't think about the product in some ways. I'm always like, damn, like that was a good time, you know? And so for sure the time that I spend with my mother is a beautiful time, you know what I mean? But the photograph in some ways is not as important as the time, you know?
That's awesome.
Anyone else?
Anybody else?
All right, with that said, let's give a round of applause to our curator and all of our